3-1. 3-1 was the spread the night Justin Gaethje got in the cage with Khabib. 3-1. And when I give you those odds, by the way, from DraftKings, I always round them. None of you ever seem to complain about that, but you do get the real gambling experts that don't round. So I do admit that, and it is a little bit relevant in this case because it was a little less than 3-1. It was in the twos. And I bring that to you because that match, I didn't know how good Khabib was. I knew he was the best in the world. I recognized his championship. I did not know how truly good he was until the match with Gaethje was over. And by the way, the things that Gaethje has said about Khabib after that match also just help you to know how good he was. I mean, Gaethje was just very open. He was very honest to talk about the domination, to talk about what happened, to talk about I couldn't get off, I couldn't get going. I mean, Dustin Poirier said as much as well. Not in an interview, Dustin Poirier said that to a corner man in between rounds in the Khabib fight. He's all over me. I can't get any space. I can't get going. I'm completely on defense because his offense is so active. I'm adding to it, but I'm just sharing for you. Those things are very meaningful, right? Guys get reputations. You hear about these types of things, but you don't always hear about it in that level. Here's something about it. It'll go through your school. It'll go through your town. Things like this. You don't always hear about it on this level, and it really spoke to how great Khabib was. And Khabib, once again, on DraftKings the night they fought, rounding by Chael, was a 3-1 favorite. Justin Gaethje came out last night and said, I would like to fight Islam. He's not Khabib, and I want to prove it. I know for a fact he's not Khabib, and I want to prove it. What do you think of that? Now, not just the X's and O's. I mean, let's get right down to what would DraftKings have that fight at? Because I feel they would have Gaethje versus Islam at about 3-1. I think the odds makers do think that's Khabib. Or at least that's the heir apparent, or at least that's the next best thing. Some people, right, most people will say that's the next best thing. That's out of respect. Some people in the know say he's better than Khabib. That Khabib has made sure of that. That Khabib, through his training and his mentorship, went out of his way to make sure that Islam is better, right? I mean, records are set to be broken. And it's just an interesting conversation. I would love if DraftKings did post odds to that fight. Now, they're not going to unless Gaethje beats Poirier this weekend. You're still not guaranteed that DraftKings will put the odds, but DraftKings is known to put out hypothetical odds for a fight that they believe is likely to happen. And there was a lot on this, and it was more than just Gaethje making a statement that he would like to fight with Islam because Islam's not Khabib. It was a lot more than that. And we've all been waiting for this, haven't we? We've all known that Dustin and Justin are perennial contenders anytime you want to do it. Any way that you want to do it. And they were both going to have a hard time getting back to the championship because they'd already been there with Oliveira. So when Islam mixes that up and removes Oliveira, all of a sudden, Dustin and Justin, perennial contenders, are right back in the mix if they want to be. And that was the big question, at least for me. Do they want to be? I wouldn't blame or begrudge them either way. Those two guys have done so much and given so much in such high-profile capacities that if fighting for the championship just wasn't the road, it just wasn't the mountain that they were setting out to climb again, I would understand. And generally, I wouldn't. But I would in their case. It would be an exception. Not to mention, they already have a title fight. If they begin going after Islam, it would reduce perception of their title fight. It would reduce the esteem that title has. Now, I don't think that they thought it through that clearly. I don't think that's why they didn't go after Islam. I think they were just focused on something else. I haven't seen Dustin or Justin do a whole lot of media on anything, including the BMF fight. I mean, it's one of those situations where you wonder why they're not talking about Islam. Sure, they were asked. I'm not sure they were ever in a platform, and it was put to them. The things that I've heard from Dustin over at least the last month and more like 6 weeks is just things that he put it. It's a one-way message, right? A monologue done through his social media. And I would be very curious. I mean, look, I know they're saying that Oliveira is going to do the fight. I know that Oliveira has said that he's going to do the fight, but that's one time Oliveira said he'll do the fight. Now, it was a big one, right? He signed a bout agreement. That's a big one. But it's still 1 versus 3. That's one time we've got Oliveira saying that he will do the fight, not to mention it's secondhand. All right, we're told by the promotion, again, it's a big one. It's a big hand. The bout agreement is more than a couple of statements. I understand these things, but I still want to tell you guys the score. We're now told one time secondhand Oliveira will do the fight. We were told 3 times by Oliveira himself he won't. So just 3 times by the guy himself saying I will not fight Islam in October, does that get superseded by 1 bout agreement that somebody else told us was signed? And not for nothing, if there's ever a card that I'm going to bring a backup fighter, it's that one. If there's ever a match that I am not going to count on, it's that one. And I do think that it's very relevant, the winner of Dustin and Justin, if that's a match that they want, if that's something that they want to do. Right? I don't just have a choice to bring a backup fighter. By the way, I need a fighter to agree to be the backup fighter. It's one of the things that made what Volkanovski did so honorable. When Volkanovski demanded to be the backup fighter, trained for it, got up to the weight class, got licensed, and went out to Fight Island and sat in the front row. Sometimes you can't get these guys to want to go into that backup position. And it was a cool and it was a coveted spot until it wasn't. And it wasn't the day that Conor McGregor came out and said, I'm not a backup fighter. Then everybody else, not a backup fighter either. Right? Nobody is allowed to have an autonomous thought in this sport. But I do think that it's very interesting. And I do think that Justin has thrown his hat in the ring. And I do hope that DraftKings at least does a hypothetical odd. Because I would like to know, does the public agree with Justin that Islam is not Khabib? And by the way, that statement is not Khabib. You guys understand, right? Do I need to clarify this? It means he's not as good as Khabib. But does the public believe that? I mean, there's been people all the way down to Coach Javier Mendez that have paid Islam larger compliments in certain aspects of the fight. On the feet specifically. I've seen some really incredible things out of Islam Makhachev. I would like to know what DraftKings would have Islam versus Justin Gaethje. That would fascinate me. But if I was to guess for you, I do think that it would be 3-1. Which is the same thing that they had Khabib. But what if I was wrong? What if it was 3.5? What if it was even 4? What if DraftKings agreed with Justin and said, yeah, that's not Khabib. He's better. What if? That'd be a very interesting talking point. And I do think as we get closer to this weekend and we get more media and we get more press, I think eventually Poirier is going to speak up. And I think Poirier is going to be saying something very similar to what Gaethje said, which is I would like that match. I would like to get in there with him. And whether he makes comparisons to Khabib or not, I do think our 2 perennial contenders, Dustin and Justin, I think they both are hungry. I think they both want to crack. I haven't heard that from Poirier yet, but I predict for you as the week goes on, we will.